Hey there, everybody. Welcome to today's Bible in 1 Year reading. We're going to just dive right in to 2 Samuel chapter 7, starting in verse 18. We're going to read about David. It says that he goes to sit before the Lord and he begins to pray to God. And he says, "Who am I, sovereign Lord, and what is my family that you have brought me this far?" Now, first of all, we're seeing an incredibly humble response from David as he goes to pray before God, because if you'll remember, just before this, God made an incredible, amazing, astounding promise and covenant with David that includes the foretelling of Jesus. So this was a really big deal, and we're reading David's response to God's amazing promise. David's response is to come in humility and say, "Who am I that you have brought me this far?" Now, this verse stood out to me for a couple different reasons. It really pierced my heart. One, because we do see a great example of responding to God's blessing and promise with humility and recognizing God, if God is blessing me and bestowing his favor and grace and promise on me, it is because he is great, not because I'm great. And David models this so well in this instance. But another thing that I thought about as I was reading it is I just sensed the Holy Spirit prompt me to say, has there ever been a time that you've sat and been in this posture before the Lord when you're going through a difficult time? So when you haven't received the promise yet and you're feeling discouraged and frustrated and worn out, have you ever sat before him and said, "Who am I, sovereign Lord, that you have brought me this far?" And it doesn't sound normal. That wouldn't be our normal response. Oftentimes, my normal response is to cry out to God and be like, "God, turn to me, hear my cry, hear my prayer. I need you." But I can actually think of some times where I've been in a place of discouragement and frustration and exhaustion. And and the Holy Spirit has led me to a place of sitting before the Lord and just reflecting on where God has brought me, reflecting on how good and faithful and kind and merciful and compassionate he has been to me. Even just working in full-time ministry, sometimes I feel tired and discouraged and worn out, and it can feel like a daily grind, just like anything else we do. And I'll have times of being like, "Lord, I just want to lay in bed all day today, and I don't want to," or I'm feeling really beaten down by something that's going on in ministry or whatever it is. And I can testify that God has brought me into a place where I get to sit with him, and he just reminds me, "Emily, do you remember how far I've brought you since I even first called you into ministry and you didn't even really know it at the time," which was actually about 10 years ago. That now looking back, I can see, yes, God did call me into this. And I can see how he's been faithful every single step of the way and just faithfully brought me from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, all along his purpose. So when I'm feeling discouraged, I found that it's actually very encouraging in my heart and in my soul to reflect on how far God has brought me to this point, that he has been so faithful. He has been so kind. He has done above and beyond what I could have ever imagined in my life thus far. And this isn't even the end. So I hope that encourages someone today. If you're listening to this, maybe you are someone who has just received this awesome promise from God, and you can take David's example of humility and spend some time sitting before the Lord and just reflecting on God's greatness and how it's all about who he is. Or maybe if you're in a place of discouragement today, this is also the same response that you can take, is to take David's example, sit before the Lord, and reflect on God's greatness. Reflect on who God has been to you, where he's brought you, how he has already fulfilled so many things in your life, so many of his good purposes, and how there's still more to come. I've found that reflecting on how far God has brought me gives me encouragement and hope for the future because of who he is and just seeing his consistency in that. Even if in the present moment things feel kind of cloudy or confusing or discouraging or broken, taking time to reflect on who God has been gives us hope and encouragement for who God will be and who he is even today. So I hope that encourages someone today if you're watching this, and encourages all of us to just reflect on how we can be more humble before the Lord and take up that posture of humility just like David did in response to a great promise of God. Also knowing that when God promises us something, we can be sure of it. We can take confidence in what God has said because he is true to his word. So much encouragement for today. So I better stop there, but I hope you guys have a great day, and we will see you next time.